We've all had questions similar to these. In fact, people have been asking these questions for thousands of years. But where do we go for answers? Let's take a look at the Bible, God's living word, and see if it can provide any answers. It helps to go back to the very beginning. When God created the world, He made it perfect. We see this from the beginning of the Bible in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created light, seas, dry land, and the plants and vegetation that cover it, the sun and the stars, the creatures of the sea and the birds of the sky, the animals of the land. And God continuously pronounced His creations to be good. Then God created mankind in His own image. Looking upon all that He had created, God saw that it was very good. Did you catch that? God was so proud of all that He had made, He declared it to be very good. This is how everything began, in perfection. There was no death, no disease, no pollution, no suffering. Nothing was broken. Everything was how God had designed it to be. It was perfect. This was the world in which the first people, Adam and Eve, lived. In the Garden of Eden, sin had not entered, nor the shame it brought. It was just Adam, Eve, and God. Without sin interfering, Adam and Eve had an intimate relationship with God, one where God could walk with them in the cool of the evening. This was the world God had in mind, the world which He desires for eternity, and the relationship with man He longs for. But it did not stay this way. You see, God gave Adam instructions. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Though this seems to be a rule set out from a controlling God limiting what man can do, it is actually a gift from a gracious God giving man a choice. It let Adam and Eve choose to either do it God's way and not eat of the tree, or do it their own way and eat its fruit. Which way do you think they chose? In Genesis chapter 3, we found out what they ultimately chose, and meet the serpent. The serpent set out to deceive Eve, asking the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat the fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden. And you must not touch it, or you will die." "You will certainly not die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Notice how from the beginning the serpent twisted the very words of God, attempting to show Him as a ridiculous God who placed man in a bountiful garden, but refused to let him partake in any of the fruits of the trees. We know in reality God blessed them to partake in any of the trees but one. He continued to a more absurd lie, that why we must not eat of the forbidden tree's fruit is that it would make us like God. But Adam and Eve believed the lie. They ate the fruit and sinned against God's very clear instruction. From this moment on, the world was never the same. Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. For the first time, death came into this world. And a few pages later, the first murder took place when Cain killed his brother Abel. We see that all the world's suffering began with one act of Adam and Eve, and the world has been longing for Eden ever since. The Apostle Paul said it best in Romans, "For we know that all creation has been groaning, as in the pains of childbirth, right until the present time." So why then is the world broken? Because since Adam and Eve, man has continuously chosen our way rather than God's perfect way. God had a perfect design and we blew it. But here's the good news. God didn't give up on His people. From the moment that man sinned and God placed punishments on the world, He also set forth His plan for redemption. "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." This is God's first reference to His plan of redemption, His plan for Christ to come into the world and defeat the serpent Satan and all the sin which his lies brought. The Old Testament is a narrative built upon the relationship of God's redemptive plan and man's rebellious nature. But God was not going to let His creation remain broken, so He provided a way back to Him through His Son, Jesus Christ, coming first to be the final sacrifice on the behalf of man to save us from our sin, and will come again a second time to defeat sin for eternity. And on that day, He will wipe every tear from our eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things will be gone forever. For us still living in a broken world, this is our hope. While most of human history has been one of brokenness and rebellion, God's eternal end is one of wholeness and restoration. I hope you know that the stories we have shared are not some fairy tale, a story with good morals but without basis in reality. No, this is real history, the history of God's great redemptive story, one in which you are a part of. I encourage you not to just take my word for it, but to do your own research about what has been said and any other questions that may arise from it. If you got nothing else from this video, know this: God loves you deeply. So much so that he sent his son, Jesus, in your place so that you do not have to die, but can live in eternity with God. Howdy everybody, my name is Evan with the HowToLife Movement. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and download the HowToLife app. If you have any questions about anything you've heard in this video or want to talk about how to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, please text some of our friends at 302-200-LIFE, or you can chat with them online at chataboutjesus.com.